Hey there, welcome back to New Eyes Open. Showing up again another day for myself and showing up for you and encouraging you to show up for yourself too. So, if you haven't been on this channel for very long, this month I've been doing a showing up for myself sprint. And what that has looked like right now is showing up on camera, trusting that whatever message is meant to flow through will flow through. And part of the reason behind this is I knew that I was being called to show up and speak. And I kept waiting for the right message and for the right messaging strategy. And it became more and more evident to me that that is not what is needed for me in this season of life. What is actually needed is for me to show up first and trust that when I do show up, what's meant to flow through will flow through, which interestingly enough is very aligned with my original business name, or actually my official business name is Neo Strategic. And a little story about that, I had the New Eyes Open brand. I started that way back. It was actually an idea that came to me, gosh, I think it was like 2015, or no, even before then, like 2012, because it was when my youngest daughter was still a baby, or hadn't even been born, or had just been born. Around that timeline, this New Eyes Open came through. And if you've watched one of my other videos, I do go in depth about it, but long story short, I love looking up through the branches of trees, like looking at trees from a different perspective. And my mom had asked me one day why I did that, and I told her I liked it because it gave me a different perspective of the tree. Like it was something different to look at. It's like I was seeing the tree through new eyes. And I had often used that same kind of terminology when I was talking about going from one culture to another, culture shock. It was like whether you were going into a new culture or you were coming back from living abroad in another culture, it's like you were seeing things through new eyes. So in particular, I had used this when I'd lived outside of the US for like a year or more and came back into the US. It was like seeing the United States through new eyes open. My eyes were open to how great we have it here. I had done things, I had lived very differently elsewhere than we live here, and I just was looking at everything from a fresh perspective. So it was like having new eyes open to all the possibilities that are here for us. And that is true no matter where you live in the world. But in my particular circumstance, it was when I moved back to the United States from somewhere else. And so I had that brand and then went into working with a coach on business operations, and his whole thing was, helping entrepreneurs install their operating systems for their businesses and really hiring operators or second in commands and training them to help carry the load of building this entrepreneur's business, building a team, et cetera, et cetera. And so I worked on a coaching team that coached other entrepreneurs on that for a while, and then went out and started doing that on my own, got certified as a director of operations. And when it was time to start my own business ops consulting company, I went with Neo Strategic because I wanted to pay homage to the New Eyes Open brand that I had previously started, that was more of a family lifestyle, shift from living your 9-to-5 life to traveling full-time in an RV and unschooling your kids kind of brand. And now I was shifting into this, okay, you've done that, you started a business, and now you need help building that business or scaling, either growing or scaling that business, depending on where where the entrepreneur was. And I was like, well, I'll just do Neo Strategic. And a couple years into Neo-Strategic, I was meeting casually with a business connection, and she said, "That's so funny that you are very much into esoteric tools and lots of personal development, especially more leaning towards the spiritual side of personal development. And your company is Neo-Strategic. How very Neo of you." And I just kind of looked at her. She goes, like from the Matrix, Neo. I said, "Oh my gosh, until that moment, it hadn't occurred to me that that is what that meant." But once she said that, it clicked for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I really do go about things almost from this backwards this backwards way of doing things, and that's not true. I thought it was the backwards way of doing things because I had been so trained to think about, all right, you set the plan, you execute the plan, you reassess the plan, and then you improve the plan, you execute on the new plan. That is very much how my mind worked. But then when I looked at and worked with entrepreneurs and I looked at their business, it's very much, so many of them, the reason they needed an operator or an ops consultant to come in and help them is because they worked as, okay, I have this idea, I do the idea, and then I plan for the next thing. Like a lot of them didn't go with a plan. And now that I've worked with several, it's more of a probably 70-30 mix, where 70% of the entrepreneurs that I've met and know, they got started by starting. Like whatever it was they were going to do, they did the thing and then made a business out of it. And maybe 30% are more the let's plan the business and then do the thing, and it actually goes well and they do that. So obviously I am very much more, even though I am an ops consultant, more aligned with when I actually get things done as a doer. I'm more of the 70%, I've got to just do the thing, and then we look back and reassess and build the strategy from what I have done versus what I'm planning to do. Because I can stay stuck in the planning phase for a long, long time, which is why I work great with other entrepreneurs and helping them with their planning phase. But I digress. So it was a very neo-strategic kind of thing to do, even though I have come back to revive this New Eyes Open brand. The neo-strategic aspect of it is still alive and well and operating right now, as you see, showing up for myself. This is the unplanned, very much on brand with our unschool kind of life and unschool philosophy. So yeah, that's the backstory to being here and the name of Neo-Strategic, and just showing up and doing the thing. And part of it is I'm encouraging you to show up and just show up. You don't have to plan it out, because you build the show up reps, it gets easier to do that part. And once that part is easy, then you can step back and say, all right, now, how do we approach this a little more strategically? Maybe you just keep showing up and allow whatever wants to come through, because I also believe that we are all moving more and more into this time where we are being called to have an intense amount of faith and live in the present moment. And how can you plan for the present moment other than make sure you have made the commitment to show up? And once you've shown up, whatever wants to come through during the present moment can and will come through, assuming that you have good intentions, clean, clear vessel, which leads into all other kinds of things, like how are you taking care of your vessel or your temple, however you want to look at that. But keeping your body healthy, keeping your mind clear, we've talked about before on this channel, like getting the mind junk, clearing out the mind junk, that negative self-talk, or sometimes it's not necessarily negative self-talk, it's anxiety self-talk, like all the worries that really there's no outward evidence that you should be worrying about these things, but they're coming into your mind. That's mind junk. It is here to distract you. It's part of your ego trying to hold on to the side of you that thinks it needs to plan before it does. And if you make a commitment to just showing up and doing the thing and being who you are called to be in this moment, your ego is going to protest. And part of the mind junk comes from that. It's just, that identity, that old identity trying to just stay alive, struggling to stay alive, and it's going to try to distract you however it can. So part of encouraging you to show up for yourself is for that, so that you build the reps of just showing up, being and doing, because being involves sometimes doing, right? What you're called to do and being who you're called to be in this moment. Show up however you're meant to show up at this time, so that you build those reps and that part becomes the easy part. Then you can focus on being intentional with the other parts that go along with it. And I think that's a good place to stop today. We can talk about being intentional and what that looks like and what that means tomorrow, maybe, unless something else wants to come through tomorrow whenever we meet back here. So thank you so much. I appreciate you joining me on this journey. If you are on a journey yourself, I would love to hear about it in the comments below. I also covet your likes, your subscribes, your shares, all the YouTube-y things, so that this message can get out to more people. Because if we had more people showing up as themselves in the world, however they are meant to show up at this time and this season of their life, it would be a much more vibrant place to live and be. Because I believe each of us has a role we're meant to play. And if we're playing somebody else's version of that role, then we're robbing each other of our light and joy and just our most vibrant selves, because you are meant to be who you are meant to be. Not who somebody else thought you should be. All right, guys, thank you so much. And until tomorrow, I hope you're well. Take care.